everybody. Today we're going to review a few things about our musical staff and letters of our musical alphabet. And then we're going to put them all together. And this is going to be a little introduction to note reading, which will be helpful when we get to recorder, and those of you that choose to play an instrument in 5th grade band. All right, so let's start with our music staff. Now, think for a second and try to remember how many lines and spaces are on our musical staff. And hopefully you came up with the answer of 5. There are 5 lines, which then creates 4 spaces in our musical staff. Here we go. All right. So line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 4 spaces in between. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now something else that we've talked about previously is the treble clef. Hopefully you recognize this symbol right here. Only difference is now we've put the treble clef on the staff. Before we've seen them separate. Now we're going to see them together. This is very important in telling us which note goes on which line or which space. Okay? There's different clefs. There's a treble clef, bass clef, alto clef. The only one we're really concerned about right now is the treble clef. It has another name. It's called the G clef. It's the other nickname for it. Okay? And we'll see if you can figure out why it might be nicknamed the G clef at the end of the video. Okay? So we've got our lines of the musical staff. We've got our treble clef. Now I want you to remember how many letters are in our musical alphabet, because we're going to need those to name notes on the staff. So how many letters are in our musical alphabet? Thinking. If you came up with 7, you are correct. 7 letters of our musical alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. As soon as we get to G, we go back to the beginning. So it'll be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We could go backwards. G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. Doesn't matter which order we go in, but when we get to the G, the next thing is going to be the A. Okay, so now we're going to use these letters, we're going to use our lines, we're going to use the treble clef, and we're going to put them all together. In the first sentence, I'm going to tell you to put them together. Might sound kind of goofy. Every good boy deserves fudge. I'm sorry, girls. You deserve fudge too. Just doesn't quite work out for our purposes. Okay, so think every good boy deserves fudge. And I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to write those letters. E for every. G for good. B for boy. D for deserves, and F for fudge. Every good boy deserves fudge. Okay, I started at the bottom with the E and went up line by line. E, G, B, D, F. Every good boy deserves fudge. You could think every good boy does fine. You could do every girl bounces down flowers. That one doesn't make as much sense, but it could work. Okay. I want you to be thinking of what sentence you could come up with for these 5 letters. E, G, B, D, F. In that order. They can't go out of order. Okay. So now if I were to ask you which note is on the second line, think of the sentence, every good boy deserves fudge. That second word is G. Good, so G is the answer. G goes on the second line. If I were to ask you which letter is on the 5th line, think every good boy deserves fudge. 5th line, 5th word, F. If I were to ask you which letter goes on the 3rd line, again, think every good boy, and the answer is B. Now we've got the notes for the lines. We've got 5 out of the 7 notes. Now we got to figure out what goes in the spaces in between. There's 2 ways to think of this. One is to think of a word that rhymes with space. The other is to just think about the alphabet. Remember I said we go in alphabetical order. We don't always start with A, but we always go in alphabetical order. So we've got E and G. Well, think of the alphabet. What goes in between these two letters? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm going to put an F in between here. Okay, now we've got G. Remember what I said happens after G? We go back to A, which makes sense since the next one is B. Between B and D, A, B, C, D, and then E. So you notice we have our alphabet, and we repeat once we get back to A. So we start with E, though. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and we could keep going. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And we can go down and backwards, too. Okay? So you can either go in alphabetical order, or you can think, look at the purple letters, start from the bottom, going to the top. F, A, C, E spells face. Face rhymes with space. Okay. So again, if I were to ask you which note is on the third space, think face, F-A-C. C is the answer. Which note is in the first space? Think of the word face, spell it out. First letter, F. Okay. In our next class, we're going to do a couple different activities that involve thinking about the notes and where they go. So I'll be asking a lot of questions such as which note's on the second line, which note's in the third space. To help you remember, I want you to come up with your own mnemonic device, and that's creating your own sentence or word to help you. Okay, so again, think of a sentence for E, G, B, D, F. Think of a sentence or think of a words for F, A, C, E. You can do face, or you could say fuzzy aliens can eat. Anything you want that makes sense to you. And that will be very helpful. Okay? The last thing, remember I said that treble clef is also called the G clef? Here's why. On our G clef, there's this little curly Q part. And that curly Q is going around the second line. Now think about the sentence. Every good boy deserves fudge. That second line is a G, which is why it's also called the G clef. Okay, so to summarize, we have 5 lines in our staff. 5 lines, 4 spaces. On that staff, we put the treble clef. Okay? The treble clef is what tells us the order of these notes. We always go in alphabetical order, even though we don't always start with A, we always go in alphabetical order. We always go from the bottom to the top. Our lines, every good boy deserves fudge, E, G, B, D, F, and our spaces spell out face, F-A-C-E. Okay. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an introduction on putting all of these different musical elements together, and we will talk about it more next time. I'll see you in class.